Well, well, well. Look who's here. I got asked by this guy to do this thing, and I don't know what's going on. I've had some rough times lately. People haven't been taking me very seriously anymore. I used to have this really nice, intimidating hammer. And now I'm left with this thing. Anyway, for those of you who don't know who I am, Carl Heisenberg's the name. Making uninspired, factory-based 2000 and aught era gameplay is my game. And killing Ethan Winters, and also having a very over-the-top voice acting role where I do a lot of extremes and sound kind of, well, a little bit like I'm in a high school production rather than a AAA game. And yet, I'm the penultimate boss before you get to meet the mother maiden, no, mother, whatever. I also don't say my R's right. That's part of my quirkiness, is I say a D instead of an R. It's kind of like Mayor of Easttown. I say water. I can go into my Mayor of Easttown impression now, which is, there's been a murder. We need to find, the body was found down by the water, and them flyers and them eagles. And it was one of those weird shows, I'll tell you, because I thought that the murder itself was actually pretty well scripted. And that's something that's lacking in most, I think it's lacking in most murder mystery shows. Even the ones I really like stylistically or where I really like the writing. You know, I love True Detective, but damn if it doesn't fall apart in the last couple of episodes. But Mayor of Easttown, at least it had a well thought out murder. The only other show, which I think is a far superior show, where the murder in recent memory, right? And I've been alive a long time, and I've been locked up in my factory for a long time, and I've been making people hit green buttons and red buttons in order to go through doors that look identical to other doors and segments of hallways that look identical to other segments of hallways, and try and bore the hell out of you before you get to the end of the game. That's how I was protecting Mother Miranda. That's right, Mother Miranda. That's how I say her name. By boring the heck out of you. Not to mention the fact that I couldn't come up with an original name. They've already used Heisenberg's name in recent pop culture for a villain. Come up with something else. Plenty of people would have fit the bill, I think. Anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about Mayor of Easttown, right. So I thought the murder was actually pretty well scripted. You know, you'd have to go all the way back to Broadchurch, season 1, of course, to get a murder that was that well scripted. But I didn't like it for like 1,000 other reasons. Acting was prime among those. And seeing so many people fawn over the accent was really kind of, it just seemed kind of silly. Felt like Kate Winslet pretty much carried that show. But she almost didn't. Actually, oh gosh, I'm forgetting her name. Kate Winslet's mom. Kate Winslet's mom, I think, kind of carried that show. But everyone else was kind of crap. If you didn't know who the murderer was by the at least the penultimate episode. And I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you haven't watched a lot of murder mysteries. You haven't seen things telegraphed in that kind of predictable way. But it was fulfilling. I just wish the writing were better. I wish the acting were better. Got to do more than just have a Philly accent. Anyway, I'm running out of steam here. This is embarrassing. It's like being given a pea shooter after you had a BFG. Yeah, I'm making a reference to Doom because the gameplay in my section of Resident Evil might as well have been taken straight out of fucking John Romero's level design, which wasn't bad for the time. We've moved on, haven't we? I don't know, have we? Guys, guess what? It's me. It's not really Carl Heisenberg at all. Let's get rid of this. How many people did I scare off with that ridiculous thing that I kind of thought up at the last minute and happened to have props for to some extent? I do like the way I'm just noticing this. The way the warm light is reflecting off my hat and the rim light is actually doing a really good job getting the edge of that hat. Maybe I want to leave that hat on. If I take it off, I'm going to have, oh boy, that's not pretty under there. I'm getting a haircut this weekend. So this messy jumble of fucking frizzy. People ask me, like, what are the signs that I've noticed of aging? And, you know, a lot of people will say stuff like weight or wrinkles. And I guess I have my fair share of wrinkles, but really, like, where it's been most pronounced with me is, like, the texture of my hair has changed a lot in the last 5 years. Now, honestly, I haven't had my hair long in a long time, so I don't know what could happen if I cut my hair. Now, while I am going to get a haircut this week, I'm not going to cut it short, I don't think. I think I'm going to try and continue growing it out, but just in a more uniform manner. Good evening. Cheers. I'm thirsty. That's really why I stopped to that bit. Also, I hate bits. I hate YouTube channels that do bits. It's always like a cutaway. I'll be talking about something serious and they think that, you know, they can't hold your attention, so they'll do like a quick bit or a quick kind of corpsing to the camera and then do a quick cut and go like they couldn't contain their laughter or what they were doing. What they're doing wasn't even funny. But anyway, hope everyone's doing okay. I'm going to have to take this hat off. And I am afraid of what is underneath this hat. Yeah, it's not pretty. Not pretty. Oh my Lord. Well, whatever. This is the last one before it will be cleaned up and comparatively nice. It's the end of this will be my first haircut since 2019. I don't even think I got a haircut in 2020. Because I was kind of growing my hair out at the beginning of 2020 already. So Crikey. It's a long time. I feel weird sitting in that chair. Went to the dentist and I felt very, very vulnerable. I mean, you feel vulnerable when you go to the dentist anyway. But the idea that I was just like laying there with my mouth wide open, propped open, and several people hovering over me. And at one point, the hygienist in charge of making sure I don't feel like I'm being waterboarded by the amount of liquid collecting in the back of my throat was not doing such a great job, and I reflexively coughed, and kind of water went everywhere. I felt awful. I felt like, oh my God. Even though I'm vaccinated, I was just like kind of like this. If I were them right now, I'd be so mad at me. But really, I wanted to be like, hey, look, you got that hook thing. Let the hook thing do its job. Get on top of that. Get on top of the hook thing, man. That's what I wanted to say. I didn't say it, though. I just coughed and apologized on their face shields. So, it's definitely not going to be. Usually haircuts are very relaxing, right? It's definitely not going to be relaxing. I'm going to be like, just do it as quickly as you can. Get me out of here as quickly as you can. I'm not here for idle banter. I don't really want to catch up on the last 2 years or really talk about. Oh, I know it's been difficult, very difficult for people who do hair, people in, like that's. Shit, yeah. I don't know. I'm going to be torn between my sympathy and my fear. Either way, it's not going to be a good time. Good evening, everyone. Let me say hello. Let me say hello to y'all. Hi, Q. Oh, did it cut off the deadline? It was too long. Yeah, today's the day. The Writing Extravaganza deadline. I mean, if I get it tomorrow, it's not going to be the end of the world. I'm not going to be draconian about enforcing that. Katerina, Ms. Pavi, oh, I wish you would. I've read a bunch that have come in, and they've all been great. I've really liked them, the ones that I've read so far. I got a bunch, like under the wire, right? So I got a bunch today. Obviously, I have not read all of those yet. Hi, KJ. Butterfly Composer. Let's see. Colorful Dreams. Hi. KJ number 2. Well, both KJs. I don't want to designate one of you number 2 or number 1. Both KJs. Chels, how are you doing? I got your submission today. Yeah, today? Yesterday, maybe? I have been getting submissions if people are worried. I'm sorry I haven't been replying. Been a bit busy. This is a piece of hair. See it sticking out there? Look at that. You can just see the highlight. Looks like it's just like a floating dead pixel. Like an Army of the Dead. The dead pixels they had. I kind of like it. I'm going to leave it there. My hair would never do that. 10 years ago, my hair would never have done that. It would just lay nice and flat. Luxurious. All right, I don't want to get too lost in the everybody makes fun of how I get lost when I'm reading or trying to catch up with the comments. So let me do it quick. Warp Raven, hey. Xava, Lisa, Shabana, hey. No, it was not. It's a good idea, though. Should do that. Hey, Carolyn, how are you doing? LQ, good to see you. Lirio, howdy. Oh, goodness gracious. Selkie, how are you doing? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, and also NaNoWriMo is in November. You could always do it for that as well. That one comment. What was that one comment? I felt I could do his voice because it was bad, and I do bad voices. You didn't like that fly-in on the name? I worked seconds on that. I almost went with Comic Sans, but it's a good idea just to cover your bases. I read now that Amazon is dropping marijuana from its talk screens, which I always want to ascribe like negative motivations for why they do stuff. In a way, you could think, well, they're trying to keep their employees happy in ways other than performing as an ethical company or treating people equitably or ethically. They could just say, well, you can still smoke pot if you work here. Huh? How about that? It's kind of a plus, right? There was no effort in it. There was no effort. I had the hat. I had the glasses. I had notice the themed, this is like a Pink Floyd hammer. I need two of these to cross them. It's very the wall. Going with the reds today, chair, etc. I have these as well because they came in a pair. But these do not look like the ones that Heisenberg wears. I just messed up my hair again. It's just a disaster waiting to happen. Am I high? You're not allowed to ask me that question, Lisa. I'm high on y'all. Good. To me, this is a success. Well, he's got to talk about something. He's so boring in the game. I couldn't keep it in canon. Otherwise, that would just be... I should have talked a little more about Mother Miranda. Grace, of course you are. Taking chances. All right, I gotta scooch down. Hey, Maddie, Gigi, hi. Yeah, it was me the whole time. I don't know if it was like how shocking that was when I removed the glasses and you realized it was actually me. Lori, who is Lori? I don't even remember the names of the characters. But if Lori was Siobhan, I couldn't stand Siobhan. I couldn't stand Bobby. I couldn't stand the guy from The Office. I thought they were all just not hitting it. And the actor that played Siobhan was in an episode of Black Mirror in which I thought they were very good. So I think it material based. I don't know. I just didn't like it. I'm not sure what to tell you. Yeah, it was. Flagelo. It should be. It should be on the. This is the thing that keeps me up nights now, is the texture or weirdness thereof of my hair. It does make me want to just kind of cut my hair and say fuck it. Oh man, fuck you, Flagelo. When Flagelo arrives, it does feel like it makes it more of an event. This is what I wanted to do. This is my goal. Was to get it to about shoulder length. But if honestly, like if I'm at the point in my life where it's so brittle that it's just going to break and look like crap the whole time, then I may abort the initiative prior to it getting to that length. We'll just have to see. Oh, hey, Luke Imana. I have not seen you in a while. Nor have I seen Justin Prochnow in a while. Really, is it? I mean, have things changed that much? Isra Khan, hi, good to see you. Fake name, I wonder who fake name is. I don't recognize the avatar. LQ. I do curse a lot. I know it's lazy. Shouldn't do it. But it feels good. Unbuilt Nuke. You got a haircut and a beard trim last week and it was amazing. I don't know you. Who are you? But I'm glad that you were able to enjoy it. Taylor Pontrelli, I don't know you either. There's a bunch of people here who I don't know. Yeah, you know, the hook thing. They put it in your mouth, sucks all the shit out, and they say bite down on it. Or they say close your lips around it, but then you bite on it, and they say no, don't bite. Oh, I just gotta go all the way to the bottom. Coffee Cheetos Chicken with the Aphex Twin logo as an avatar. Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. That was the goal. This sounds like me. There's some new people here this evening, which is awesome. Let me get back down to the bottom, and we can get on track. Olivia, get a keratin treatment. Yeah. Oddly enough, dyeing it seems to be the only thing that relaxes it. I know they say like dyeing it is supposed to damage your hair, but it actually feels like it relaxes it quite a bit. You did not dream this, Chels. I have put olive oil in my hair before to control it, and it works, but it doesn't smell good. Don't do it anymore. Although the stuff that I use, which is actually a hair product, ironically does have olive oil and coconut oil in it. I gotta get down to the bottom here. Okay. Lila Brune, good to see you. Okay, so last week, obviously, had a lot of fun was talking a lot about stuff that is of great interest to me. I mean, this has nothing to do with it, but just want to call out, right, that it is LGBTQ plus. Is it Pride? Just Pride Month? Do we just call it Pride Month? Is that what we call it? I found it weird. Somebody commented on the last video that basically said, like, you're so obviously a straight white male. And basically they were saying that it was wrong for me to question my friend's sexuality, in part because I'm so obviously a straight white male, and it's none of my business. And generally, I agree with that. I don't think I'm obviously a straight white male. I think that was a assumption that they made. And I'm not sure exactly what characteristics, apart from my voice, I don't have very many traditionally masculine characteristics. I don't think. And my journey through, like, what my orientation is and what I like and what I don't like has not been a straight line. And no pun intended there. It's gone, many different ways, and made me think about things many different ways, in large part because when I grew up, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't much forgiveness for that. Right? So people who know me know that, like, prior to my father dying, I lived one way, and then after he died, I lived another way. As far as where I existed in the caste system, because although my father made a fairly large amount of money, we were not protected against that, the eventuality of him not being around to continue making that money. It wasn't that kind of wealth. So when he was around, I was running with one kind of crowd, and then after he wasn't, shortly thereafter, within a year, maybe in 18 months, but really within a year, it was really quick. I changed schools, a whole bunch of shit happened. Within a year, who I hung out with, who I considered my friends, what I was doing every day, all of that changed. But anyway, the point is, prior to that, I was into equestrianism. I was into riding horses. Both me and my sister would, go to horse shows, English, of course, a little bit of side saddle. And my mother forbade me, and I'm not sure how much my dad had to do with this. Looking back on it, I think may have had something to do with it. But as far as I knew at that age, my mother told me I couldn't ride horses anymore because it was for girls. I loved riding horses. That's my favorite thing. It was devastating for me. But of course, that's a really, like, privileged thing, right? I wouldn't have been able to ride horses anyway after my father died. Just wouldn't have been able to afford it. But just to kind of give you an idea of, like, the kind of things, the kind of input I was getting, and that everybody was getting, and some people react or have, like, the strength of character to react to these external pressures with, well, fuck you, I am who I am, and I'm going to do what I want to do. But then some people are weaker, and they will, like water, they will sort of take the shape of whatever you pour them into in an effort to be accommodating. And I think that's kind of what happened to me in a lot of ways. So when I was talking about questioning, I was asking questions. I was not questioning as in like doubting, but I was questioning my friend, asking questions of my friend, because I really wanted to know, like, did you encounter any of this? I was just trying to relate to somebody, like my experience to somebody else, and see if I was alone. I'm sure I wasn't, but in my close, and I remember that this friend of mine, because this was a time when people said FAG all the time in the 90s. Like, it was ubiquitous. People just said it for everything. It was like Smurf. Like, people just said it over and over for everything. It didn't matter what it was. You did one thing in the clique of friends that I had. Anything you did that was, you trip, you park wrong, you fall off your skateboard. Anything you do, that was the pejorative that got thrown at you. And I adopted it. Like, I fell into the same patterns that everyone around me had, because I didn't have the presence of mind or the strength to sort of like, I didn't feel it. Like, inside, I didn't like feel what it actually meant. And I honestly think a lot of these kids at that time weren't even thinking about the implications. That was just the word du jour, de decade, or whatever, right? So that was getting thrown around all the time. And I remember when I started sort of playing in bands, as a young teenager, a very close friend of mine sort of pulled me aside and was like, you should probably stop saying that word. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he kind of had he was a couple years older than me, and he had like a kind of a heart-to-heart talk with me about it. And I stopped, right? And like, after that, I was just like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize. And then I also didn't realize that the reason that he had pulled me aside to tell me about this was because, my new friends, my new group of friends, the people whom I loved and accepted completely, were not like my old friends. And I mean that in a good way. And there were several of them who were bisexual, homosexual, and that was at that point. Now we're talking like getting to like the early mid 90s. It was becoming more accepted. It was not the late 80s, right? The late 80s, there really was a difference. And I don't know if it was like the rate. I don't know what it is that sort of, or if it was just my personal journey, right? Maybe it was just my personal journey. I don't want to blame too much on the environment that I was raised in. But it felt, and so my friend told me, yeah, this person, who I was close friends with, I considered a very close friend, was homosexual, but was not out. And I had been saying the F word like all the time around this person, and I felt so bad. Like, I just felt like, what a piece of shit I am, that was rough. I'm sure it was much, much harder for him in his life. And I really regretted that I was a part of that through thoughtlessness. Like, I've never felt that way at all, right? Like, I've never felt any sort of, I honestly don't care. And I feel like my first sexual crushes and encounters were homosexual in nature. I was young enough, probably, that maybe maybe you could write that off as experimentation. Maybe. I don't know. I just don't know. Like, I don't know what would have happened if I'd been allowed to just be who I was. And if I was not this sort of weak-willed person who existed in this very sort of narrowly structured, do this, like this, want this, kind of thing. Anyway, I'm yammering a lot about stuff. I didn't actually plan to yammer about that. So tangent achieved. And I'm sure I said like some things there that probably could have been taken the wrong way. So I apologize post facto, of course. But I guess I feel like my heart's in the right place. That I'm just not that quick. Like I misgender people, and it comes from thoughtlessness, but that it's not an excuse, right? There's effort that you have to put forth, and you have to adapt to change as well. So I don't buy this shit about, you reach a certain age and that's just the way you were used to. And I believe, right, there should be friction to massive changes, right? There should be some kind of friction. It shouldn't just be like a free-for-all for everybody to kind of declare whatever they want. There should be some kind of mechanism that's like, change should not be so easy that you wake up tomorrow in a world that is completely different than today. There should be a grooming process. But having said that, then, I mean grooming by like, obviously I don't mean grooming in the, do I even need to say that? I think you all know what I mean by grooming. Anyway, let's get back. I still feel shitty about this. Yeah. So one of the things that I've been looking into, and I had hoped to look into it and get into it more last week, was this idea of biology as destiny. And, your biological gender determines a lot about your brain, and that the male brain is fundamentally biologically different than the female brain and hardwired to be better at different things and to want different things. Now, my knowledge up until fairly recently of neurobiology, neurochemistry, anything neurological has been woefully out of date. I was very into the layman's Oliver Sacks broke his brain, right? Trying to think who else. A bunch of the science for lay people. But that was a long time ago. Things have changed. And so the books that I'm reading now, when I say books, it's really 3 books, but I plan to keep reading, authored by Gina Rippon, Cordelia Fine. They're really kind of delving into this idea of, one, like the gender continuum, 2, neurobabble and sort of bad neuroscience, which has been propagated and has entrenched itself so deeply in the minds of people who a priori were looking for a certain result, that even if they get results that are now with better, more longitudinal studies and more in-depth studies and studies that cover for implicit biases, and research has gotten better over the past couple of decades, not worse. methodologies have gotten better. We've been able to see the implicit biases in research that was done 40 or even 30 years ago. And it stands to reason then that a lot of the studies that we thought were conclusive really should be reexamined. And one of the things that I found, I mean, it makes perfect sense, but one of the things that I found sort of really interesting about looking into this process now was specifically Gina Rippon was going back through all of these neurology studies on the differences between male and female brains. And both her and Cordelia find have a very sort of like, what is a male brain and what is a female brain? You can't even say what that is, right? But using the definitions that were established by researchers, which is just to say XX, XY, which is nowhere near enough to cover all of the subtle gradations and interconnections and interfaces with the outside world and neuroplasticity and the ability of your brain to rewire itself. This idea that you only get X amount of brain cells, and by the time you're 6 years old or 8 years old, it is true, when you're 6 years old, you have 90% of your brain size, your brain volume. But one of the things that now is being hailed as more, one, we can grow new brain cells, although we don't grow them as well later in life as we do earlier in life. It's not like you're given a finite number and they just start dwindling when you're 18, and too bad. But it's not just about neurons, right? It's also about connections and making the connections between those. You know, a worm has less than 400 neurons, I think. But if you take into account all the ways in which those neurons can be connected, a worm is a simple creature, right? But it seems like it would need more than 400 neurons just to be able to navigate the world, just to be able to exist. Because the proof in the pudding there is not necessarily the number of neurons, but the number of neuronal connections, right? And those connections are made and unmade as we grow up all the time. And our brains, in reaction to external stimuli, make new connections, and ones that no longer serve us are gone. Now, I don't want to pretend to know more than I do, so I'm going based on the knowledge that I had, when I went to college, where I majored in biology in the 90s, and then the sort of personal Philistine dilettante interest that I had in the subject since then. But anyway, so one of the most interesting things that, there's tons of interesting things actually that came out of this, but one of the most interesting things to me was a lot of these studies that you hear about, and this is very, I'm not citing the studies right now, so this is very unscientific of me to say this, but a lot of these studies that confirm that, say, boys are better at spatial relationing tasks, girls are better at multitasking. A lot of these studies are actually, you're only getting parts of suites of studies. And so you might have had 6 studies that were done. I'm just pulling this number out of my ass, right? One of them showed a marked difference in the spatial relationship ability of an infant female and an infant male. 5 of them did not show that difference, but the media only picked up on one of them. They call it the file cabinet. Yeah, the file cabinet bias. So there are tons and tons of studies that exist, apparently, that directly countermand the studies that get the media attention and push forward the narrative that we want, or that the established scientific community seems to be comfortable with, to wit, there is a distinct biological difference between the male brain and the female brain. And therefore it's futile to fight against that. Oh, fuck. I forgot. When I was Heisenberg, there was something I wanted to show. Okay, so trigger warning, cicadas. Saw these and I was disgusted and amazed, really more amazed than disgusted. But I forgot to make the joke that Heisenberg had resorted to after his fall, being forced to construct his monstrosities out of brood 10 cicadas. Look at that. Look at that. And I think that's incredible. And that's all cicada exoskeletons. The part of it that really gets to me is I really don't like cockroaches. And they were ubiquitous in the South. As anyone living in the South knows, cockroaches are a scourge. I have not seen one cockroach since I moved to Maryland and Virginia, D.C. And when I lived in D.C., if there were cockroaches, I should have seen them. I saw plenty of rats, plenty of silverfish, plenty. Never saw a cockroach. Don't see cockroaches around here. I know there are cockroaches in New York City. I don't know why there are no cockroaches, at least that I've seen in D.C. They're all over the freaking place. In Miami, you can't go anywhere without them. But one of the things that cicadas have that really sort of get on my nerves is their legs. You see the horns coming out of this fella's head. Those legs are very, very cockroach-like. And that is one of the things that, like, if their legs looked a little different, a little less cockroachy, I would be much more sympathetic towards cicadas. Although, frankly, I've gotten to the point where I just want them the hell out of here. They're all over my back porch, all over my front porch. You sweep it, next day they're all there again. They're every tall piece of grass. They're on top of every tall piece of grass. Made me wonder about, like, why did we not evolve some kind of symbiotic relationship between plants and animals whereby a plant could serve as some sort of cocoon? Like, why do cicadas have to tunnel underground, live down there? Why don't plants help them? Like, why couldn't there be a symbiotic relationship between them where you see, instead of flowers blooming, cicadas bloom, plants grow, and they help incubate the cicadas that will eventually help them pollinate or what have you. I'm sure it has something to do with the base biological differences between plant cells and animal cells, but I obviously don't know enough about the topic to say anything. But look, this thing I think is pretty amazing. There's another one that's a little less amazing, but still very cool. Got a xenomorph there. And I don't know, is that it? I'd assume if the one on the left is a xenomorph, the one on the right is also meant to represent a pop culture creature, but I don't know it. If any of you know it, scream it out in chat. Anyway, I forgot to bring those things up. I meant to while I was Heisenberg, and I'm not going back into Heisenberg to do it. Where was I? So I'd like to talk more about that, about gender and biology's destiny and the differences between boys and girls and why girls can't be scientists and boys can, and at what point is a boy and at what point is a girl, and can we tell the difference between subtle indoctrination and biological differences from the womb? There are so many faulty studies that give us this idea that that female brains have preferences that, according to new studies, the effect size, that is the actual difference in relation from those studies, is statistically insignificant. So the overlap is, and in almost all of these studies where you hear about, like, well, boys do better in math, right? Boys do better. Boys do better in STEM. Girls don't do as well as STEM. But if you looked at those Venn diagrams, they're literally like the two circles are just like that. It's like one is slightly offset. Very, very small significant effect sizes. So anyway, let me see. Got new comments here. I want to be sure I'm addressing any stuff. Oh, Olivia, I didn't know this. Yeah, it's tough. I found that to be so tough. Like I found that, frankly, like not in the long run, I guess, but at the time, like that was the thing that I was like, yeah, my dad died, and that hurt. But to me, it was like, why does my entire life have to change? You know. But at that age, also, you know, you're fairly, you know, thinking about yourself. Let's see here. My brother and I are both feminine guys. He's gay, I'm bi. He's working fashion design and me music. It opened my dad's view on the subject because his sons, weren't the sports boys and etc. And this brings up questions too, right? Like interesting things like, because what this kind of implies a little bit is that if you're homosexual or feminine, that you're going to be drawn to these stereotypical female activities, where, I mean, I think the truth is probably that you could still be into football, but you'd be much more likely to push all that stuff down and not acknowledge it. Maybe. I don't know. There's so many questions. Another thing I found really shockingly tone deaf, and I'm not sure there's stuff that I'm saying that's shockingly tone deaf, but I'm trying to learn, I promise. So one of the things that they and this is well established, right? Like there's not as many women as there are men in STEM-related professions. Why? So there are going to be root causes, and then there are going to be symptoms or more higher level things you can do to maybe address it. And Mattel, bless them, which I have to look at this cynically. I can't look at this and the details around it and not say, this is a calculated move by a company to appear to be a certain way, while actually not really caring about it. So they introduced a STEM Barbie, Mattel did, a few years back. So it was a scientist Barbie. By the way, in one study where they asked 5,000 children under the age of 5, roughly split between male and female, to draw a scientist. 4,500 of those scientists were men. They drew men with beards. Apparently beards and glasses are very important if you're going to be a scientist. You have to have a beard, you have to have glasses. But Mattel made this STEM Barbie. So the idea was, let's get girls who are playing with dolls. And maybe this was, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this was like a way to subvert the parental bias of, I'm not going to buy a chemistry set for my daughter. And Mattel was going to be like, okay, well, we'll slip this in to try and help. But to me, it's still just so incredibly tone deaf, because look at what they came up with here. So this is the STEM Barbie. And in conjunction with Thames and Cosmos, who, if you know Thames and Cosmos, they make chemistry sets. They make, not erector sets, but they make similar types of what are considered boy toys, the spatial toys, the Lego type toys, and chemistry sets. But here's what really kind of gets me about this is, and got I think everybody who saw this probably, right? You have STEM Barbie. She's a scientist. What can she make? She can make a spinning closet for her clothes. She can make a washing machine for all of the clothes that she will be washing. She can make a greenhouse. Yeah, okay. She can make a hammock. All right. She can make a shoe rack. She can make a jewelry holder and a designer platform. And the rest of what she can do is make dresses. So to me, that's kind of like, well, not just to me, I'm sure to anyone who sees this, it's like, well, you got halfway there, Mattel. Like, you're saying you want your Barbies to not be so cookie cutter, gender stereotypical, and yet the things that you're having your Barbie make are kind of the exemplars of what is considered stereotypically feminine things, except for the hammock and I guess the greenhouse, right? But a washing machine? Can you imagine the Ken, the STEM Ken? STEM Ken maybe would have some clothes stuff, could have the hammock, certainly. STEM Ken is going to be making cars and trucks. And maybe, fission reactors. So I feel like this was just like a drastic misfire on Mattel's part. Or it was really, really smart. And I'm wrong, right? It could have been like, this is how we're getting our foot in the door. This is how we have a 10-year plan to insinuate ourselves into what are considered stereotypically feminine toys, and we're going to slowly change them out and subvert the idea of what is objectively stereotypically feminine. But we got to start somewhere, so we're starting with STEM Barbie making jewelry holders and a washing machine. Anyway, what is up? Let's see what else I got here. Maddie, I'm assuming because you wrote that, it's okay for me to put it up here. A judgmental family is so powerful. Last night I was watching Louis Theroux as he infiltrated the Phelps family. And those of you who know who the Phelps family were? I know Fred Phelps is dead, but I don't really know how active the Westboro Baptist Church is anymore. This series is about 10 years old, so this is back when they were pretty active and in the news a lot. But Louis Theroux ought to have entitled that show, I Infiltrate the Phelps Family, and try to talk sense into the younger, less indoctrinated members of that family. And it was interesting to watch for a couple reasons. One, it was interesting to watch him talk to a lot of the daughters who were maybe around like 14, 15, in that age range at the time. And they would just tell him, like, look, you're going to hell, right? And then the thing about Louis Theroux, which I like, is I don't know that he is autistic. I do feel like he's very good at his job. Like, he doesn't show emotion. It's just like whatever's being said, whatever's being thrown at him, he just kind of takes it in, nods, and then very politely asks follow-ups that are pointed. And I watched an episode where he was in an asylum talking to psychiatrists. And to me, like, I would have sworn, like, in those conversations, pick who is the mental health expert between Louis Theroux and the psychiatrist. I would think it was Louis Theroux. Like, the questions that he was asking were very, very insightful and making the mental health professionals kind of go, oh, I've never thought about that before. So, I mean, he does his homework and he has a pretty insightful mind. But it was interesting to see in this particular case, like, what the Westboro Baptist Church is largely family-based. I mean, they have a lot of kids, and the kids are indoctrinated from birth. And they claimed, a lot of them were like, well, I'm not going to talk about sins that I've committed. That's in the past. I don't commit sins anymore. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have children, all this stuff. And then they kind of go and, like, Google them now. It's been like 10 years or 12 years since. And I think every one of them is married and with children. And a lot of them have left the church. I don't remember why I brought that up. I think because I just watched that the other day. All right, let me keep going here. If you're talking about the idea that biology is destiny, that's considered to be a universal thing. It is not specific to the West. In the neurobabble version of it, at least. Beep, 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 beep. Yes, Q, of course, is on point. Oh boy. I'm fairly certain this is prevalent in Eastern societies as well. I mean, in China, they would execute female babies. Like, they just wanted boys. Correct, butterfly composer. Of course, I would expect you to be on top of that as well. Yeah, I mean, we're so adaptive, and as we grow, right? It's exactly what we were talking about before. Like, new connections are made. Old ones that aren't pertinent anymore fall by the wayside, and we keep making newer and newer ones. I agree, Lirio. Coffee is predominant everywhere. Definitely is. Oh. Anyway, I'm going to put up. So this is what I'd like to talk about. I mean, here's your stereotypical what male brains can do and what female brains can do. Male brains are 10% larger than female brains. Of course, men or males tend to physically be larger, and it is not about the size of your brain. It is the proportion of your brain size / volume to body size. Otherwise, we'd be much dumber than whales. Maybe we are. Optimized for, look at this, more likely to develop alcohol dependence. 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. 4 times more likely to have autism. Twice as likely to develop Parkinson's disease. I mean, some of those are interesting because, like, those are not, you, those are very definite. I mean, Parkinson's disease is not something that it's like, well, maybe you have it, maybe you don't. Females twice as likely to have depression. Males more likely to develop alcohol dependence. Those things are sort of like, alcohol dependence is often self-treatment of depression, isn't it? Twice as likely to develop Alzheimer's? I'm actually shocked by that. 4 times more likely to develop MS. And more likely to have a stroke. Now, I think the more likely to have a stroke and the fact that birth control causes strokes, I wonder if that was corrected for. I just feel like most of these, or a lot of these things, I don't want to just be speaking in broad generalizations. Let me put up the email here if people want to talk about this, because I would love to get perspectives on this. So please, if you want to talk, I saw you in the chat, Caroline. I don't know if you want to talk or not, but you had reached out last time, and I don't know if we ran out of time or we had already had too many people. But yeah, we'd love to talk to you about it. Insecure about my legs. Wait, what? What? Don't remind me about the banana spider. When you mentioned the banana spider, you get the banana spider. But just for a moment. I do remember this. I'm ready for Brood 11. I'm ready to wait for Brood 11. Okay, let me get down to the bottom here. Planets. So you're saying, yeah, like we just kind of have this arbitrary setting that Pluto occasionally qualifies for and then doesn't. And there are plenty of asteroids between the orbits of Mars and Saturn. That why aren't any of those classified as planets? Is that kind of what, I think that's kind of what you're saying. Let's see what else. See what we got. Oh, right. Okay, there you go. I see a lot of people here. I see a lot of people here referring to Albin. But I haven't seen anything from someone named Albin. I wonder if it's getting filtered here for some reason. Weird. I'd say it's more of an art. Yeah, this is the way it goes. I should have done this. Like, in all fairness, I should have thought to do this. I didn't. I don't want to break now and do it, but I like that. Okay, getting down to the bottom here. Yay, Chels. Louis Theroux, he reminds me of like a calm John Oliver, a much more, dare I say it, tolerable John Oliver. Oh boy. I don't think so. Look, okay, so Poppy, I'm definitely not, like, I'm not, I was in no way attempting to slag the difficulty of anything that was shown in that Barbie STEM set. I was just trying to point out that those things that were being built were considered stereotypically feminine. That's all. Oh, cool. Dustin Howell. I think I've seen you before. I guess maybe I've seen your actual avatar in the wild. But thank you for coming by. Oh shit, Selkie, can you call in? I'm always down for a good Westboro Baptist Church story, especially after seeing like into their houses and listening to like, and yet like, man, what's so weird about that is they're so hateful, right? And yet someone drove by and like threw a Coke. It was from a Sonic, I remember, threw like a big 64-ounce Coke that hit one of the 7-year-old kids who was holding one of the signs in the head. And he was just like dazed, and you could tell like he didn't understand what was going on. He didn't know he was being sold. Like, and Louis knew this too, and basically asked him like, "Do you know what this means?" And he was answering, but he was just repeating what he'd heard. It was sad. Is it? I don't think this is the same shirt as last week. Is it? Could be. I like this shirt. And I would have worn the red one, but I wanted there to be some contrast. However, you know, you think I didn't wash this shirt? Come on. Jason Belmore, thank you. It's good to see you. There's a bunch of new people here. I'm guessing that's a result of having JB on last week, which is great. I'm super, super thankful to her. It was lovely. Yeah, exactly, Carolyn, right? So, men just drink. Depressed? Not me. Existential dread? Not me. Please rant. Yes, we are. Oh, some people have already emailed. Let me get to the bottom real quick again. Oh, okay. I don't know. I wonder why Albin is not showing up in my list of stuff. But then people are saying good old Albin, as if Albin is Albin, has Albin existed in chat and I've just been, for some reason they've been filtered for me? I do think I remember this. Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, goodbye, new people. We lost the new people. We kept them for a while. You know, we're already an hour and 15 minutes in. They stuck for Heisenberg. Well, Mouse Bear, I mean, maybe it's not something to be proud. Well, I don't know. It's definitely not something to be ashamed of, but I would say like this is your agency. This is you doing what you need to do to exist in the world. And who's to say, should you just grit your teeth and bear it? I don't do that. I think everybody copes in their own way. And even people who say, well, and of course, using, phrases like man up and just bear it, right? They have their own way of coping. E.g., you're kidding me. I've been missing out. Albin, I'm sorry if it seems I've been ignoring you. For some reason. Oh, wait, no. I see Albin, and it's their first stream, so trying to make me feel bad. How dare you? All right, let's see who's on the line. By the way, I've got a lot of stories in, over a dozen, more than I thought I was going to get. Okay, here we go. We got people. Oh, shoot. Okay, interview on. Copy. Send. Ooh, Westboro story from Selkie. It could be short, Selkie. All right. I like this part because now, I sort of batch send it out, and now it's just a matter of who calls. I'm just watching, see. Actually, I don't know who calls until I put them in the green room. I don't know who it is. But yeah, let's talk. Obviously, Selkie, if you call, we can talk about the Westboro stuff. Oh, look who it is. Oh, and almost simultaneously, but in second. Let's see for a second here. Oh my God, this is like a trifecta. So normally I go with whoever calls in first, I talk to first, but I'm going to make an excuse here because I think that Selkie's story is short from what they'd said. I don't want to gender anybody. So I'd like to talk to Selkie first, if that's okay with everybody else. Because I want to get this Westboro story out. I think there might be an audio problem. Let's see what happens. Selkie.
Hi. Can you hear me?
How are you doing? Yeah, there is no audio problem. I can hear you perfectly.
There's none. Okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, there's no audio. There is no problem.
Okay. When you say there's no, I'm like, oh dear.
Just having the negative there, I could see where we. How are you doing?
Yeah. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. You're on your phone? I'm taking it.
Yes. Yeah.
I love how versatile this eCam is, that it allows this to. It doesn't matter what you're calling from. I love it. But so you had a run-in. You said in DC?
I did. Yeah. I went to the Reason Rally the one time that they did that. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Reason Rally?
No. Could you fill me in on that?
It was a event that they held for atheists or agnostics, anybody that was non-theist in Washington, D.C. They were supposed to make it an annual thing, but they only did it once. And they had people like Charles Darwin, Eddie Izzard, Bad Religion played. It was really a sick time. It was a lot of fun. But there's a lot of scientists that debunked faith healing. There was a lot of people were there.
Can I interrupt for a moment
Sure.
just to point out, because you mentioned Charles Darwin, So in Gina Rippon's Gender in Our Brains, just to show that, like, people are not, even incredibly smart people with very scientific minds, it's very difficult for them to detach themselves from the era that they're in. And I think this quote from Charles Darwin on women is interesting to
Oh
look
dear.
back on.
What
He
does it
said,
say?
the chief distinction in the intellectual powers of the two sexes is shewn by man attaining a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than women can attain, whether requiring deep thought, reason, or imagination, or even the use of senses and hands. So, but that was a long time
Wow.
ago. Like, willing to cut him a little bit of slack just because he was, to some extent, a product of the era in which he lived. But anyway, sorry, didn't mean to sidetrack.
Well, there is a story about Charles Darwin from one of the, there's like a lot of, you know how in any community there's a lot of sects of different schools of thought, like feminism and stuff like that. There was one within the secular community, I guess we can call it. And there was a story, and I think that you can actually look this up. He was basically like, there was somebody who was sexually assaulted at a conference, and he basically made the point that, well, you're not living in a Taliban rule, and you're not subjected to these Muslim, like he's kind of like very anti-Islam. I mean, he's an anti-religion in general, but he's very like anti-Islam. He said, you're not subjected to this sort of treatment like they are in other countries. So basically, just like shut up, like suck it up, is essentially was his comment.
You've got it better here than you would over there, so just be happy that you're not over there.
Basically, that was his takeaway from that whole situation, because it was a friend of his that was accused of the sexual assault, of course. So, perfect.
Frankly, I mean, I'm even kind of shocked that it would have even been something that came up back then. I mean,
in 2012. Yeah, I guess so.
Oh wait, no, I'm talking about Charles Darwin. I'm sorry. Are we conflating?
Oh no, sorry. You know what? I'm talking about Richard Dawkins.
No, Richard Dawkins. First of all, fuck Richard Dawkins.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry.
Richard Dawkins does not have Charles Darwin's excuse.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I understand why you would conflate those two, but or if I wasn't clear in saying.
Yeah, that was completely my fault. Sorry.
Yeah, so Charles Darwin, I think, can get a little bit of a pass, maybe.
No, he
just
can.
Because
Yeah,
of
he was
how
different
long
time.
ago it was. Right. Richard Dawkins, fuck him. But anyway, so yeah. So the Reason Rally.
Yes. So at the Reason Rally, so I think one of the reasons that the Westbury Baptist Church came was because one of the sons of you just said his name, Fred Phelps. One of his children was there. He actually founded a organization that was for people who were leaving not just a Christian, but like any kind of religious community. Excuse me. And it was essentially like him advocating for, like, if you've experienced abuse under religion, like this is an organization that I advocate for. So that was he told his story. And I think that's part of the reason they were there. But they showed up, and in real life, it's kind of like going to, and this is not me being classist, but it's like going to a trailer park and just seeing like the most trashiest, like craziest group of people just acting insane, like in public too. It's crazy. There was this older woman who was there, and she was wearing this giant like t-shirt that said, the God hates the F word. And there was this 12-year-old girl with glasses who was sitting there, and this poor girl, nobody was in the right in this situation, but essentially she was there. She had this boombox playing music, and it was like Taylor Swift. It wasn't Taylor Swift. It was like they like to take songs that are secular, quote unquote, and then they'll like change the lyrics to some other crazy nonsense. And I can't remember, it was some kind of parody of a Taylor Swift song. And this little girl was standing there with the boombox. and she was crying because people were just leering at her. They like these are the atheists that are there in the crowd. They're all drunk. Not all of them, but so the people that were yelling were drunk, and they were calling her like a little. I don't know if I can cuss on here or not,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they were calling her. They were calling her like they're calling her like a little bitch, and like calling her a slut, and calling her all these horrible names. Again, this is a 12-year-old, or maybe even younger. I'm just guessing she was 12.
She was
But she
part
was
of the
crying.
Westboro
Yeah.
church. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she was just there with them. Like you could tell she didn't want to be there. She was just holding this boombox up, and like this older woman with like a visor and this big T-shirt was standing next to her, and she started to cry because all these people were accosting her with all these insults. And the woman that was with her from the Westboro Baptist Church comes over to her, and in clear earshot, I could hear her even over the music. She slaps her slap across the face and says, "Don't let these fools bother you." And there was a police officer standing not 30 feet away. And my first instinct, because I used to work as a social services worker, I'm the person that they used to call. Like I would knock on your door and be like, "Hey, we got these allegations of child abuse. Like we need to investigate this." So I got to have that fun job. So my first instinct was to go to the police. So I ran over to the police officer. I'm like, "Did you witness this? Did you just see what happened?" And they were so resigned. He just like shook his head, and he was like, "If there was anything I could do, I would," because I guess they're just so good at beating the legal system. But like, I mean, it was in plain view of all these people just
several
slapped her.
lawyers, like the daughter, Shirley, Fred Phelps' daughter is a lawyer.
Yeah.
A few other people in the family are lawyers, highly educated people. I don't get it. Like I don't get like the weird sort of dichotomy going on between the level of education and the ideas that they espouse. It makes me wonder how. It makes me wonder how much they even buy. Like are they trying to be agents of disruption and thus change, or do they genuinely, literally believe in what it is that they're saying? I don't know. I mean, they seem like they do. They seem pretty fervent.
That's what I was going to say exactly, was that there was fervor that I witnessed just seeing them in person, because like this isn't, I mean, you live in this area, so I'm sure you can, it's a swamp. I mean, I live in South Carolina, which is literally like a swamp, but it's a swamp. And it was like the hottest, it was so hot. And there was all these people there, and they do this all the time. Like they go to people's funerals. I just don't see how you could do that all the time and not believe in it, and to some extent, because I just don't see it. I don't see how you could put up the will to go through with all those demonstrations. But they were there the whole time, the whole entire they were, when everybody else was setting up shop, they waited until basically everyone else shut their booths down, because we were just walking around the DC area and we saw that they were still out there by the time that like the stage had been set down, because this was on the National Mall. And they were still there. They were still like wrapping it up, I guess.
And apparently they fly all over the place to do that. That was one of the things that they were talking about, is they spend, over $250,000 a year just flying to different, it's exactly what you said. Like a lot of times it's soldiers' funerals, or at least at the time it was soldiers' funerals, which to me seems like a very strange, to me that's just like, that's doing something for a reaction. Like that's that's being disrespectful of something that they call it worshiping the dead, which I don't, I don't get that. It's more honoring the dead, right? And I don't believe in colonialism, and I don't believe that really, we should be involved in 99.999% of the military things that we are involved in. And but I still, weep for the loss of life, right? I mean, so I don't understand why they. It just seems like a lot of their point is to antagonize as many people as possible. So I don't get it.
I personally loved whenever that organization bought that house right next to them. The one like they painted it rainbow colors.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I was pretty excited about that. I
I'm
thought that
sure
was
they
awesome.
tried to use, their family lawyers to do whatever they could to stop that, but apparently they couldn't.
Yeah, they tried the HOA, they tried a couple things, but they were within their rights to paint the house, and I think it's been vandalized quite a few times, but that didn't. I think they're still there. I think I think, and it's if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to be something to help homeless LGBT youth. I think, or if they're affiliated with someone that does that. So I think that's really neat.
It is, although, would you want?
Would you want to be that close?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Would I?
maybe it's just their headquarters. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess like if it were, yeah, I could imagine like for people who are vulnerable and who are like low, um, to live in a place where they have to walk outside every day and essentially stare at the Westboro Baptist Church, that could be a problem too. So, yeah, so maybe it is a headquarters or something like that.
Yeah, I could see why that could be triggering for
Yeah,
sure.
a good gesture though. That is a. It has the same kind of ring of theatricality that going to, I mean, in a very different way, obviously, but that going to a funeral does, and saying that this soldier is going to hell because uh, essentially they say, like, all of the U.S. is going to hell, because we allow for homosexuality to exist, we endorse it.
Yeah, that's what I thought, that the reason that they were going at the soldiers of funeral, I mean the soldier funerals, the funeral of soldiers, because of that aspect of like, well, this country's going to hell because of the way that we allow like gay marriage and stuff like that.
Right.
That was kind of a big picture issue.
Yeah, yeah. It just seems like the decision to say, well, where are we going to do this? Oh, I know, at dead soldiers' funerals. Seems like a very
Mm,
calculated move to stir shit. But, yeah, which I'm sure it is, right? And they got, I mean, it worked, right? Like they got tons and tons of media coverage. So I guess they got what they wanted. I don't even know what what their state is now. This thing was over a decade old. I didn't follow up except to see how many people who were expressing how their undying fealty to the church, and then 10 years later they're like, oh no, I'm not a part of that anymore. I don't want to talk about that anymore. I've moved on. And obviously Fred Phelps died, years ago. So
yeah, and
um,
like you say, it kind of, I can't remember the last time I heard Westboro Baptist Church in any news outlet. So I wonder
yeah,
if they've kind of died down since then.
yeah. I mean, they were a one trick pony, sort of, right? So at some point, get tired of the same thing over and over again.
And one of the things that his son said at Reason Rally was that he believed, I mean, I think this is kind of a commonly held belief, that his father was gay, and that was sort
Yeah.
of why he was the way he was.
He was
Um,
excommunicated near the end of his life, from his own church. Fred Phelps was.
oh, I
Um,
didn't know that.
yeah. And apparently, like, when he died, he was recanting a lot of, or some of this is some hearsay, but was recanting some of the things that he had believed in, and therefore his family sort of shunned him, apparently. So whatever. I mean, he seemed like a total fucking asshole, from what I saw of him in the Louis Theroux documentary. But that's
Yeah, and
awesome.
so
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's
No,
awesome
I was
that you
just
went
gonna
to this
say, like,
reason.
because you had that similar sentiment about Richard Dawkins, which again, sorry for for mistaking him for Charles Darwin. That was my bad. But I was just the reason I thought that was interesting that you say that is because he is a really big evolution
Hmm.
psychology guy, and he would probably agree with half of the stuff about the difference between the sexes, which is what you were
Oh yeah.
talking about earlier in the podcast.
I mean, he wrote The Selfish Gene, right, which is a
Yeah.
treatise on sort of. I mean, it was one of the earliest, I think, widespread mass publications talking about associating specific behaviors with genes. So, um, yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I haven't looked into. I read The Blind Watch. I've read a bunch of his books, and half the time I'm like, oh, interesting. And half the time I'm like, fuck you. Like it's just kind of. Um, he's not somebody I'm very sympathetic about his views, or I don't really like to listen to him because he just tends to. He's very. I don't know. I find him really arrogant. Right.
It's kind of like watching Bill Maher. It's like I agree with some of the
Yep.
stuff you're saying, but it's the way you're saying it.
Yeah.
You know.
If you were just if you could just like make a few changes, so many more people would embrace you, and you would be able to get a lot further, I think. But maybe not. Like maybe like the sort of that extremist sort of hardline thing is maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know.
I don't know what his motives are. I not to be, and like this is no offense to you as a man, but like I've gotten so tired of trying to like decipher men's motives. Sometimes it's just like, I don't know. It's hard, especially men in power. It's like we spend so much time trying to decide and determine like what do you mean by that? By that particular sex.
Yeah.
So I just like
I
know, and by the way, that is, you do identify as a man, right? I'm not, because you were just saying that. Like, is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to double check before
more or less.
Insulted your gender. No,
I identify as a man. I'm definitely what the right would call a self-hating man, right? So, whatever. But thank you for calling in, Sulky. And it's cool that you went to that. Did you go specifically you went up for this Reason rally specifically?
Oh yeah, no, like I said, I'm from South Carolina, and I was a part of a college in my group, in my college. We were called the Pastafarians because that was really edgy back then. Do you know the flying spaghetti monster and all that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the phrase Pastafarian as well.
So we went as a group, and we went up there for the Reason rally, and it was a lot of fun. Like I said, Bad Religion played. Eddie Izzard did a set. He even he didn't fully cross dress, but he did some makeup, and I thought that was really cool. Because I that was my first and then there was a drag show at the end of the night. It was really fun time. There was a lot of really interesting people there. There was a lot of really there was some very serious talks as well. There were scientists. There was a woman who was from Iran, I believe, and she had been run out of her country because she wanted to, because of her education and because of her beliefs. So she was there, and she's a politician. I can't remember her name, but it was a really good time.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, I think, kind of cool that you got to see the Westboro Baptist Church doing the terrible things that they do, right? And I don't know exactly what the consequences were, but I'm guessing they were way in the minority, and I guess to some extent that kind of calls to mind the whole kind of punching up, punching down idea. If the atheists / agnostics were being too hostile, then you could almost start to sympathize with the Baptists, right? And then you don't want that either, right? So it's a fine line.
There's just douchebags on both sides.
Yeah, everybody's
it's hard.
Everybody's an asshole, right? Especially in the right circumstances.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's hard to being in the secular community is so difficult because you have a lot of different types of atheists. You've got atheists that grew up that way, and they were just always sort of, they've always had that belief, and so they're very more passive about it. And then you've got people who are healing from trauma from coming from an abusive a Christian or whatever religion's background, and then you've got the militant atheists that are just everything they say is combative, and it's just not fun to be around at all. So especially when you get into a political sphere.
The Ricky Gervais theists, you call those?
Yes, not even and at least he has some charisma, he's a little funny.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Right? I could go the rest of my life without hearing him talk about atheism, though. He doesn't need to do it anymore, I don't think. But
yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Thank you for calling in, Salki, and I appreciate you. Everything you always contribute to chat and you being around. It's really cool.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Bye, guys.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye.
All right, so I have two people now on board. I'm going to try bringing both in at the same time. See how this works. I've done it before, and it has not gone into chaos. Oh, whoops. Okay. Sorry. So I'm going to bring in someone. I don't know if they've been on the program before or not. I want to say yes. Am I wrong in that? Person who I'm not sure about. One person I'm sure about. There's a person I'm not sure if they've been on the show before. Have you been on the show before? Person I'm not sure about. Can you nod or shake your head? You're wearing glasses. Just in case you're not sure if. No, okay. I wonder why that is. Maybe just because you've been waiting there so long that it feels like you have. But anyway, so you all know, or you should know, or if you don't. Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing okay.
We got volume going well. And then we also have, I'm going to bring it on the right, Ms. Can we do a volume check for you real quick?
Is that okay?
Oh, perfect. Oh my God, I can't believe that worked for both. So to start with, Carolyn, how are you doing, Carolyn?
I mean, I'm okay. I guess it's on topic for this episode, or at least some of the discussion in chat for me to say, I'm struggling somewhat with depression of late because I have one of those doggone female brains. Yeah, but I'm doing all right, and I'm glad to be here today talking to you.
So I follow you on Twitter, and I don't know if you're on Instagram or not, but if you are, I probably follow you there as well. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, I see a lot of the stuff that you post, and feel very sympathetic. Although I feel like I don't know what I can do, right? About.
Oh, yeah. Right. I mean, yeah. It's there's obviously my trans. I feel like my depression is sort of compounded by the reality of how I experience being trans in a transphobic world, and how that compounds the difficulty I have in because I'm misgendered all the time, which is of course not fun. It can make me feel very invisible, and it just can make it difficult for me to form the kinds of connections that I'm looking for, and given that the world is, I think there's part of it is the world, people are talking a lot about how, the world is reopening again, and, nature is healing, and things are going back to quote unquote normal. But for me, and certainly for a lot of people, because there is an epidemic of loneliness in our culture, normal is not great. And that doesn't mean I'm just going to go out and be having wonderful social experiences out in the world again. In fact, there are ways in which I'm dreading the return to normal, because it probably means I'm going to be in situations where I'm misgendered and whatnot, even, more frequently. So, it's a complicated collision of factors that play into sometimes into feelings of isolation or what have you, which so that's it in a nutshell.
It seems like it would be a whole new realm of anxiety, right? Because what I've been hearing is, and reading is, this is going to be like a resurgence of the summer of love, right? Everybody has been trapped inside for so long. Condom sales have gone up 25% in the last 6 months. People are just crazy for intimate contact with other people, because especially people who were single at the start of the pandemic and have been sort of trapped. And so that's what I've been reading and hearing. And I guess I've noticed it on social media to some extent, right? I don't know how true that's going to be or whatever, but so I guess what you're saying is when everybody is kind of in the same boat, right? To correct me if I'm wrong, right? But everybody was kind of in the same boat of feeling or a lot of people were in the same boat of feeling isolated and trapped, right? And you are in a situation where you don't necessarily feel like the lifting of restrictions is going to lift your personal sort of trap, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair. I mean, there was a feeling of isolation, of social isolation prior to quarantine, and while I definitely want that isolation to come to an end, there were also ways in which the quarantine alleviated some of the more painful aspects of it, because while I'm still alone, I was less frequently in situations where, like, again, where I'm like being misgendered or like being just experiencing transphobia like head on in so like it's sort of like, oh, I have to get reacclimated to that kind of aspect of what our quote unquote functioning society has in wait for me and for people, for people like me in that regard.
And you may be running into more people who have in the past year and change, their social skills have deteriorated to some extent, right? And they may be less able to sort of even, they just may be more prone to be blind or sympathetic, or not sympathetic, or empathetic, I guess. Not in any sort of intentional way, but maybe just like they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm outside. It's kind of like cognitive overload to some extent, right? And they may be so in their own heads that you might actually run into more of it than you did before.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. I mean, but though I'm certainly in the boat of like feeling like my always somewhat awkward social skills are rustier as well. Like I definitely feel like I'm in that boat of, oh, I have to relearn just what it means to, how do you just have a basic interaction with other people. So in that regard, I'm on the same page as other folks, but yes, there may be even more transphobia than usual or what have you in store because of the general social awkwardness that
Right.
That we're facing. Yeah.
Right. And Ms.
Yeah.
Ms. Just Ms.
Yeah.
And so your pronouns are he, him, right? You identify as.
Yeah, you've managed to pick the two trans people for today.
Oh. So can you tell? So you've apparently never been on the show before. I'm still not 100% sure I believe you, but
We've played Jackbox a few times. That's probably.
oh,
it.
you're the person. Did you beat me at Murder Mystery Party?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Screw you. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's a loaded question. Sure. I mean, I'm 20. I do nothing. I'm from the UK, but I'm in Ukraine at the moment. Oh my God, that's it. I'm not interesting.
Actually, just being in Ukraine, being from the UK, and can I ask why you're in Ukraine?
My dad's work.
Okay. And so you are trans, right? So you were born.
Assigned female at birth. Yeah.
Okay, assigned female at birth. And when did you? So you're 20.
Yes.
Have you known that you were trans your whole life? Was there or was it something that you just couldn't put your finger on or weren't sure about, and then were able to sort of through self-discovery figure out what that was? What was that like for you?
It's a complicated one, and I empathize completely with everything Carolyn said in regards to the lockdown and being able to kind of be yourself without having to like attune yourself to the people around you. But yeah, very much for me, it was a case of I didn't have a very like gendered upbringing. You know, my parents didn't force me into like dresses or stuff like that. I was like super laid back. Gender wasn't something that I considered because I didn't have to consider it because I was a child and I was just, living, So it wasn't until I kind of reached my teens and then, puberty started, it kind of forcibly had to be considered. But it was like, hey, things are changing. And I was like, I don't think I actually want that, actually. So that's when things started to kind of rise. So 13 was when I kind of started experimenting with pronouns, and then I tried to do what most people do, and I tried to just force it down, and I tried to be super hyper feminine instead. I grew
Oh,
my hair
really?
out. I wear yeah.
Is that a typical? Forgive me, I don't know, but
No.
is it typical to kind of like go, like try and over adjust exactly the opposite way of what you're feeling?
Oh, absolutely. There's, yeah, I mean, whether it's internalized or whether it's from people around you, it's very normal to kind of have that mindset where you're like, surely this can't be happening. It would be easier for everyone around me if I pushed it down. And I can see that Carolyn is understanding a lot of this.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope I hope that as generations pass, like, I think we're definitely at a point, at least here in the U.S., where obviously there's still God knows how many trans kids growing up in oppressive families or oppressive, cultures, but there are certainly more young people being raised in ways where they know that they can come out to their parents at a young age and be supported and even get like medical care at a younger age, and so that they don't go through puberty in a body that feels all wrong to them, and all of these things are happening. So it's certainly my hope that that we'll get to a point where trans people by and large don't have that impulse or that instinct to, but I certainly did. Like I absolutely thought, well, maybe I can just, maybe I'm delusional, maybe this is all just nonsense, and maybe I just need to embrace, being a man, and I'm just, I'm just not doing it right. I'm just not trying hard enough, whatever it is. I spent so much time in that boat as well, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I have to plead ignorance to that, and I apologize. But Ms., what is the Ukraine like for trans people?
So that's where it's interesting, because just before I moved, I went privately through the UK to get my official gender prescription diagnosis. That's what I meant, and to get the prescription to start on hormone replacement therapy. And in the UK, it is very unattainable to do that. We do have obviously the NHS, but waiting times from that is anywhere between 3 to 8 years. There's no guarantee you will be seen. You have to adhere to a bunch of weird rules about you have to already be living as your preferred gender. It's all kind of gatekeepy. It's a mess. So basically, the only way to progress in the UK is to go privately. And so for literally a 15-minute conversation with one doctor in I think there's 2 doctors who do it in the entirety of the UK. It cost me £300. And obviously this isn't great. It's not attainable for everybody. I think you might have to be over 18 as well. But either way, so I did all of that. I got all the paperwork. I got everything done. I went to my doctors. I gave them everything that they needed. They spent 7 months just not listening to me and just hoarding my stuff from me and not giving it to me. And I was so frustrated and so angry. And then I moved to Ukraine, and I was so scared that I was going to have a worse time. One simple Google search found a charity called Insight. It's entirely non-profit. It's all run by one humanitarian lawyer. I emailed her everything in English. She got back to me. She gave me all my prescriptions notarized and written by a doctor in Ukrainian. It's this is going to be such a Western stupid indoctrinated thing to say, but Ukraine is infinitely better than I could have ever imagined, especially in comparison to the UK. And now I'm at the point where all my stuff is in the UK. Obviously that's my passport, everything, but I could not see myself going back. I can't.
But is that a systemic approach the Ukraine has, or is that did you just happen to be fortunate there?
I think in general the attitude is good. Obviously, that means there are some who aren't, but like in general, I think it's like entirely legal and stuff like that. There's no issues. I think Ukraine is very much trying to distance itself from Russia as much as possible. So they're doing the complete opposite end of like what Russia's doing. So Ukraine is a lot more open about it. It's a lot more kind of normalized.
So you're on medication, right? You're on the hormone replacement therapy. Is that?
I'm off it right now. I've been off it for about 6 months because I'm at the point now, which nobody told me, because again, the UK aspect, it was just a case of turning up, talking to someone, and being sent off. Nobody actually goes through these things with you. Healthcare, it's more or less entirely DIY'd in the UK. So I'm at the point where apparently I have atrophied, so now I need major surgery in order to continue with my hormone replacement therapy. So I'm just kind of waiting.
And this surgery, do they offer this in the Ukraine, or is this something where you'd have to?
In my case, it's a hysterectomy. I'm gonna need a hysterectomy which again, all I have is comparisons here. I've always had kind of issues with my insides in general, and I've brought it up to my doctors in the UK before, and I remember so vividly being like 18, being still feminine presenting, going to the doctors where it was a male doctor and a male doctor trainee saying straight up, I have a history of problems with this, I would like a hysterectomy, and both of them just laughing straight at me. So I think in Ukraine I spoke to the charity that helped me the first time, and they said that I can get it no problem on the basis of it being a gender diagnosis, but that's better than being laughed at.
Yeah. Man. And you're 20?
Yes.
There's a lot to deal with at that age. And that's your personal stuff, right? Not to mention the fact that the Ukraine, correct me if I'm wrong, right? It's not like the safest place to be right now, is it? Or am I my understanding is that there is a lot of tension right now between the Ukraine and Russia, right?
Yeah. It's worth mentioning that Ukraine is the biggest country in Europe, so there's a lot of it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if you're
this is my Western.
If you're close to the west, sorry, just have to think that through. You're okay. If you're close to Poland, you're fine. If you're closer to Russia, I'm sort of closer to Russia. Then it's not great, no. But honestly, it's not. It's not terrible.
But where you are is not in danger of getting annexed or having Russian military police come in or anything like that, right? That's not something that you worry about daily, no?
No.
Okay. Wow. So you're going to school? Are you going to school, or you already graduated?
Yeah. Obviously I finished high school in the UK at 16, and then I did college for 2 years to do video game design.
Really?
Now I retained nothing. But now I'm in Ukraine because it was sort of like a weird move. I'm sort of just not doing anything. I'm just kind of, because we were planning on just being here temporarily and then going back to the UK, but we got here the week before lockdown started. So now it's been over a year that we've been here, so we're just kind of like adapting.
What is accessibility like to vaccines and stuff there?
So, like the majority of Europe, I think there's basically no talks of them whatsoever. But because my dad works on the UK kind of government front, they're rolling out vaccines for employees' families next week. So I hopefully should be getting vaccinated next week. But in terms of general population, no, it's not.
Wow.
Nothing yet.
Yeah. That is rough. It's a lot to deal with. Moving is traumatic, right? Like your personal identification and sexual experience is traumatic. Where you are, there's trauma associated with all of that. You seem remarkably level-headed given all of the stuff and the age that you're at. Frankly, 20 is pretty young, right?
I'm on a lot of antidepressants. Don't let this fool you.
Well, look, I mean, antidepressants are, I mean, I don't want to speak for, have you ever been on antidepressants, Carolyn?
Yes. Yeah, and yeah. In fact, I should be on them now, but I'm not because like I don't have I've had issues with health care coverage because I don't have like health care through an employer right now. And
Wait, did you have to do like Cobra or something like that?
I had what's called Medi-Cal for a while, which is like in California healthcare for like low income people. But I got something recently, in the mail telling me that my coverage was being discontinued at the end of May, even though my financial situation hasn't changed, and because I'm depressed, I didn't exactly like hop to it and deal with that and like call and deal with all the administrative bullshit and be like, what are you talking about? You have to like, so because I'm depressed, I failed to deal with it. And, anyway, therefore it's like, because I'm depressed, I'm not adequately dealing with my depression. You know what I mean? It's one of those
Which is, that's like a ubiquitous issue, right? Like,
yeah.
I forget
the
name.
Like, why can't we just fucking have healthcare? Like what? It's such bullshit.
I feel poorly for you. I think my point, Ms., was just that I mean I've been on antidepressants for years and years and years. I think at least in the West, right? I can't speak for outside of the U.S., but it's pretty normalized here, right? Like, I don't think there's much of a stigma attached to it anymore. I mean, I guess maybe, like everything else, maybe it depends where in the U.S. you go, right? Let's say in most of the cities, you're not going to have a problem, right? You probably won't face anything for that. But I'm curious, like I mean, we are talking about gender stereotypes and gendered brains, and like the idea that women are better at multitasking and men are better at spatial recognition and all this kind of stuff. I'm curious on both your thoughts on that. Carol, looks like you're ready to launch.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because when you posted that image of like female brains are more like this, male brains are more like this. Like when I was very young and first in the throes of gender dysphoria, I was pretty convinced, because that was all the kind of rhetoric around kind of acceptable trans identity at that time, the very little rhetoric that there was. If you saw trans people on, say, the Donahue show or something like that, right? Like I think that the dominant kind of rhetoric of what made being trans acceptable was this idea of like well, I have this brain that's just wired like the reason that I'm in so much pain and the reason that I feel so out of place as a boy in society and really feel this like this strong identification or this deep-seated like conviction that I'm female, that I'm a girl at that time is well, clearly I must have a brain that I must have been born with something where the brain doesn't match the like. And of course, like, because that was what the dominant thinking was, and I was a kid, and so that's what I believed. Of course, I don't believe that anymore, and I fully am in favor of smashing the gender binary like altogether, and don't believe that there are brains that are like what Anyway, that's yeah. So my thinking on that has evolved a great deal. But I think I can be forgiven for having harbored those attitudes when I was a kid because I did have that deep conviction and it was so painful. The gender dysphoria was so intense, and that was the explanation that was offered. Like that was like the one thing that sort of made sense was to think, oh well, I must have a brain that is like, that's like short-circuiting with this role or this, body and everything that all the cultural expectations and everything that has been assigned to me in this society.
When there are things that like just seem to make so much sense, it's almost like sometimes the dangers of analogies are like these sort of pre-existing things, right? Where you have, for as long as there have been scientific thinking minds, right? There's been this idea that like there is the female box and there is the male box,
Right.
and
right.
you are one or you are the other, right? So when you're like, well, I'm not in either of those, what can the explanation for this be? And someone is like, well, it is possible that you have, a female brain inside a male body or something like that. You might just be like, oh, well, that fits okay. That doesn't, maybe it's not perfect, right? Maybe it's not exactly what you feel, but it feels a lot better than maybe what any of the alternatives were at the time. And so then I would think it would be very easy to kind of adopt that way of thinking.
Right.
I'm Ms. How about you?
Yeah, I wanted to mention, kind of on like a deeper level here. Obviously, everything you said is 100% correct. All these things are outdated, dumb, as it is. But I wanted to specifically talk about what Isra was discussing last week, on the kind of the culture aspect, because I really wanted to. I saw like a summary from Angela Davis's Women, Race and Class, which was published in the 80s, for the record. I'm pretty sure the PDF is available online for free. I might have a link to that. I will happily plug that everywhere because it is such an important read. But obviously, writing from a black woman's perspective, she pointed out something which is like really, really important to note. And all these conversations that we have about gender, and obviously, not to presume, but we are like an all-white cast here, so like we are barely addressing surface level. But she wrote that it's very important to keep in mind that the gender roles that we have today, and the kind of boxes that we fit into today that have influenced like pay gaps and whatever else, the housewife and the oh my god, I nearly said male wife, breadwinner, of these two gender roles, they were designed just for the white population,
Right.
because
By
at
the
the
white
time that
population,
these
for the white
yes, exactly. So these gender roles never included black people. There were no black women housewives, and there were no black men breadwinners. It was just housewife, breadwinner, and then black people as a whole.
Yeah.
So these things, like, they've never been designed for people of color or anybody who isn't, white and middle class or even rich. So it's like the fact that we are still living on these kind of gender roles that aren't even designed for everyone, and it's just a Western concept. My mother isn't white. She's South Asian, and she often tells me very, very similar things to what Isra was discussing last week in terms of having a third gender kind of people that's just completely normalized. And it's so foreign to me that it is literally just a Western concept that's managed to now influence the entire world, just entirely based on white supremacy. But yeah, so it's really it's important to note that obviously gender roles in itself are bad, implying that male and female are different because of traits or attributes that we have no proof for is bad. But also on another level, it also comes down to race, it's not just gender, it's also race, it's also class, it's so many things, which is why it's so wrong.
There's Caroline, I don't know if you have something you want to add there. I don't want to cut you off. It seems like there, and obviously I'm talking as a white male, right? So it's grain of salt with all of this, but it just seems like so. The stuff that gets cited gets cited over and over again, is the hunter-gatherer sort of dichotomy, right? Where you have way back in the olden days, right, pre-civilization, we had Homo erectus and Homo habilis, and early Homo sapiens were still, the idea is that they were still divided along gender lines, and that the males of those genders males of those groups were the hunters, and the females were the gatherers, and therefore Their eyes were more attuned to pick up pink because they wanted to forage berries out of bushes. And for men, they got better spatial awareness because they had to be able to track, where the boar was going to be, when they were throwing something at it in order to kill it, right? So what's odd to me about this is like, and this almost kind of, I guess this kind of goes back to what we were talking about just a minute ago, Carolyn, right? It's so easy to like kind of look at that and say, well, it's definitely, it has to be true that like, this is why things are the way they are, right? Like men were hunting, women were gathering, and anything that came out of that was a result of these early sort of evolution as destiny sort of ideas, right? And I guess, and I realize I could be completely wrong here. To me, it seems like maybe that was a factor at some point. Like maybe there had to be like a line drawn. I mean, certainly there was definitely, and there's always been homosexuality among both genders as far back as there have been animals capable of having sex, right? Or dimorphic sexual animals. But maybe there was something there at some point. Maybe there was like some kind of line that was like, well, people who are better at this are going to go with the hunters. People who are better at this are going to go with the gatherers. And maybe there was some sort of dimorphism that was biologically based on what was the traditional, what was thought of as, or what was seen or manifested generally among the general population as male and female. I don't know what to do with that information like now, right? I don't feel like we're beholden to anything that happened a million years ago. And I don't feel like it's a good excuse to say like, well, this is the way that it was, therefore this is the way that it should be. Where I sometimes get torn is I'm like, well, was there any truth to this? And is it okay to acknowledge that there may have been truth to some of this stuff, but now is not the time to just say, well, because there was truth to it at one point in the past, that now we're just kind of slavishly beholden to it, and we're just going to keep marching forward exactly the same way as we always have been. We don't have the ability, right? I've said too much. I don't want.
Well, I'm not a scholar on gender and the history of gender in throughout human history by any stretch. I do believe, I think we do need to think about, these things do all intersect throughout history with matters of race and settler colonialism and white supremacy. And, it's such a complex, interwoven web of expectations and oppressions and, stereotypes and what have you. I do believe that, there have always been, people who, gender roles have never had any, fixed base, in my view, in reality, right? And there have always, throughout human history, been people who must have felt terribly limited and terribly oppressed by the expectations of their societies that they fit into this role or that role. And I think that any move we make toward dismantling those forces that limit people's personal expression, limit people's the roles in society or in culture that are available to them based on, say, their gender they're assigned at birth or what have you. Any progress we make toward dismantling that is good. And yeah, it's I can't speak personally with any real knowledge or authority to what functionality such things may have had at various points in human history, but I'm not a fan. Let's just say, I think we always could have could have done without those things, and that we are learning that we always could have done without those things, as we become somewhat more, knowledgeable about what it means to be human.
Go ahead, Miss.
Sorry. Yeah, no, absolutely. I really wanted to say that I think, to me at least, what catches me up here is the biology aspect, because, that's like saying, some humans get tumors, some humans get cancer. Is that like an identifiable feature? Is that now part of that person? Is this like, and I think a lot, and I think this is my favorite thing to consider, and I think the chat was talking about it earlier, is that people don't take into account, the way that humans and animals and everything on the earth have like evolved to its new surroundings. So, we don't have mammoths anymore, I don't think, because they're not
We
needed,
might though, when they clone that DNA.
Yeah, but like cats, now we have domesticated house cats. They're not like saber-toothed things
Right.
anymore, because it's not necessary. And I think the same goes for humans. There may have been possibly a time where there were people born with potentially, I don't know, more muscle or something than another subset of group of people that's been split into gender. But now that, the average male or female is born into this concrete jungle of like a McDonald's on every block, a Starbucks next door, and like a supermarket right outside the door, these things don't matter anymore. We've evolved past this. It's no longer a need. Like, we are one gender, the capitalism gender, and like we don't.
And I mean, I think an interesting, thing that's sort of related to this topic or these notions is the debate. It's not even a debate. It's an ugly, hateful crusade around trans women, young trans women in sports, and like playing on the teams in their like their
Today.
junior high schools or their high schools. Yeah, Ron DeSantis, right,
Yeah.
in Florida, that fucker.
Big
passed
surprise,
some legislation.
right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, he's so hateful. But it's like you have all this hysteria around this idea of like, well, they usually don't even give these athletes the dignity and the respect of to call them like trans women, right? They will misgender them or what have you,
Right.
or not gender them as women. But we can say like they're running like their big argument is that trans women would like just totally dominate or in sports, or they would have some kind of like huge unfair advantage. But I mean, the facts, I mean, that's simply not true. I mean, because trans girls and women have competed in sports, and they don't just sort of completely dominate over cisgender girls and women at all. Like it's perfect. It's a totally so I think I understand. I mean, in a sort of cynical way, I understand the conservative like impulse to draw a line in the sand here and to make a huge issue out of this, because I think so much sort of narrow, limiting, conservative thought kind of hinges on these kinds of beliefs that men are men and women are women, and the need to like police that and to maintain that. But I think that I really think that this is sort of demonstrating that these attitudes we have that about our bodies and biology and gender are just not these like fixed absolute kind of things that we thought they were.
Yeah. Even even if there was credence to the idea that trans women would dominate in certain sports, perhaps, right? Like, it feels to me like even if that were true, the resistance there is to change, right? It's just like, oh, things are the way they are. Let's just, let's not think about anything outside of the boxes that we've already created. And what's being talked about here, we don't know what the knock-on effects of that are. We may have to change a whole bunch of other things, and it just seems like a lot of trouble. So it's probably just best if we just say no, right? Like, it's just like, you know what? Just no. Just it feels like a cop out to me. Even if so, I'm wondering, Carolyn, like if it were the case that trans women would dominate in certain sports, maybe, I mean, I don't even know. My knowledge of I'm so horrible with sports that I don't even know one I could pull out of my hat, right? That might be the case, but I'm imagining that your opinion on this would stay the same. Like it wouldn't matter.
Of course it would. I mean, because trans women are women, and
right.
And certain, like, even if there were certain advantages, like there would always be cis women at the level of being able to compete. I mean, it's that of course. Like, I mean, it's about just acknowledging that the trans women, the trans girls are girls, and the trans women are women, of course. Fundamentally,
it's a reframing of that argument, or it sounds like it to me. Of, well, trans women are going to be able to go into women's bathrooms. Like that just means that, like, I could just say I'm trans woman, and then I could just go into a woman's bathroom, right? Like,
I mean, the whole narrative around bathrooms. I mean, it's so fucked up. Like the argument is that, I don't know what the argument is. It's such bullshit. But that I might be a danger, like that people are going to pretend to be trans women to like molest children, and but really, like, the person who's endangered, isn't, it's me, right? Like, if I am still nervous of using like women's restrooms in public because I never know if somebody else is going to try to like police that, is going to try to like make me use the men's restroom, which that would not be safe for me either. To walk into the men's restroom is just going to make me just feel extremely like uncomfortable, or is going to get like confrontational or violent with me. Like, we are the ones who are endangered by the rhetoric and by the just baseless hysteria and fear mongering around that.
and even I'm sorry, Ms. I promise I want to get this one thing. Even if I guess what I'm saying is, even if there were truth to that too, right? Like, even if there was like some, I don't know, some very deranged cis male who was like, I'm going to say I'm a trans woman so that I can go into women's bathrooms. The problem there, that's the problem that we deal with, right? The problem is not like, we don't say trans women can't go into women's bathrooms. We say, well, we got to deal with men who are pretending to be trans women in order to go into women's bathrooms, right? That's the problem.
Of course,
right?
Of course. That would be the problem. Yes.
And we should be okay with that. Like, things change.
Just because there's one serial suit out of real women, doesn't mean.
Oh, Ms., I'm sorry. I feel like
No, not at all.
Do you have anything on that? Any thoughts that occurred to you on that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously this is, again, deeper level. Within the trans community as a whole, there's already like a completely different like reaction to like trans masculine people and trans feminine people. And so, like, in my case, as a trans masculine person, like, yes, I've experienced transphobia in general because, I'm pretty sure cis people have experienced transphobia, but some people are so, like, filled with hate that they will just, like, go on a random rampage, even if the person in question isn't even trans. And, I am very bad at keeping, like, my words to myself, and I have been permanently banned from Twitter for this reason.
What, really?
But, yes, I had, like, 7 accounts. All of them got deleted. Every time I make a new one, they instantly ban me. It's very funny. But either way, like in these arguments, even if the very basic of things, you stand up for trans rights, people will always come to you, and people will always assume that you're, like, male to female, like, trans feminine. The most of the transphobia I would get would be from people saying, "Oh, you just want to get into women's bathrooms," and it's like, okay, A, wrong one. Like, it's just it's so rooted in just the hate towards trans feminine people, and I feel like, obviously I'm not speaking for everyone, and obviously this is, I feel like I'm very much kind of babying a big subject here, but a lot of the transphobia that I've experienced as a trans man has been just kind of like just people sort of not taking me seriously, or people just saying, "Oh, you're just confused" or anything like that. But I've never had anything violent on behalf of being like a trans woman. Like I feel like, sorry.
No, finish. I don't want to interrupt what you were saying. I'm sorry.
No, I'll go on a tangent. Continue.
I just wonder if you think that's because there's less of a perceived threat from trans men than trans women?
Well, that's exactly it. I think that there's still so much of this like biology shit and all this like gender stuff that people still kind of see men as like predatory and then women as just like weak. It like everything comes back down to this, So it's. I think what catches me out here is that the same kind of conservatives who would advocate for this, like, oh, trans women aren't women, trans men aren't men, are the same ones that would call, like, effeminate or gay men, like, pansies or weak or whatever, or, like, imply that they're more women than man, but then when they're like, yeah, okay, I do actually identify as a woman, they're like, hang on a minute, don't do that. Like, it's just, it's like a cat chasing its own tail, it never ends, but there's no sense in it, there's no proof in it, there's just nothing to it. It's just this endless cycle of like stupid.
Do both of you feel like at the very base that well, I guess this is a dumb question because it's a dumb question. I think, at least in modern Western societies, there has been some forward movement on this in the last, 20 or 30 years, something like that. Are you confident? First of all, Ms., I want to say you're in very good company because Donald Trump was banned from Twitter too. So, you all have that in common. But do you think that like the progress being made now, and I realize it's like one step forward, two steps back, or two steps forward, three steps back, whatever it is, do you feel hope, or do you feel despair, or do you feel like, well, I'm hopeful, but not for me, maybe for like 3 generations from now or something like that?
Oh, you can start, Carolyn, because I'm gonna think this one through.
I can already see the dramatic shift, in my own lifetime where, like, as I mentioned, like, so I have friends who are my age who have a wonderful trans daughter, and she, because she has supportive parents and because she has access to healthcare and everything that will support her gender identity. Like, I feel like her, like I had to go through puberty in the wrong gender. My face is what was, masculinized by testosterone and everything. Like, I cannot escape the fact that, like, yes, like she, thankfully will have like opportunities to probably to live in a way that, that feels authentic to her and to be perceived as the person she is in our society that I didn't have and that I don't have. So, there's no question for me that that we are making progress, but at the same time, I'm intensely aware that right now at this exact moment we are experiencing that tremendous backlash to that progress, and that we really have to dig in our heels and fight. And I don't know. I'm confident that, I do basically believe in that Martin Luther King Jr. was right when he said that about what he said about the arc of moral justice, or I'm remembering the exact phrase, but that it's long, but the moral arc of the universe is long but bends toward justice, something like that.
Right.
I'm fairly confident that, trans people are not going to stop existing. We're not going anywhere. We're not, so like, it's a losing battle to take up legislative arms against us. You're not going to like eradicate us. You're not going to like convince us all to just like, pretend to be cis or whatever the end game is there. I don't know. but it may be a longer, more drawn out, more ugly fight than it should be, and I don't know. I don't know exactly how much more. How much oppression are trans people going to be suffering 30 or 50 years from now. I don't know. It's too soon to say.
And Ms., what's your...
I feel like my kind of issue with the way things are sort of progressing, per se, is that all of it feels entirely insincere, Like, yeah, we have a Pride Month once a month every year where corporations decide to put on a shiny hat. But, like, A, that's 1 month a year. B, it's just for, like, money purposes. And like, C, it more often than not, actual LGBT people don't necessarily care that TJ Maxx thinks gay people are allowed to exist, like we're more sort of fixated on the real things in life and not like the 3 for $15 t-shirts on sale. And so more often than not, the more, I don't know, maybe this is my own like internalized stuff coming up, but the more these corporations like pander so much and like it's really, really, really try to pander, and the more kind of desperate it is and the more kind of embarrassing it is, the more it just attracts like violence towards it, as opposed to actual people who like would supposedly benefit for it. So all it kind of does is like I think just kind of gone off the topic there, just straight into capitalism again. But yeah, so the more things supposedly move forward, the more it actually just kind of brings more hate out of the woodwork, I feel like. And I feel like there's a lot of sensationalist headlines of, what was it, Mr. Potato Head or whatever. Yeah, stuff like that. You get a lot of, I'm sure there's a word for it, but I don't know what it is, but you get a lot of like sensationalist headlines that use, gender inclusivity and like trans inclusivity as like
it's like
clickbait almost. Almost to get a rise out of people. It's never like, oh, look at this cool thing. Sorry, I've interrupted you like 3 times.
No, I'm interrupting you. No.
No, it's fine. But because like, again, trans people are concerned with their rights over their own bodies, their rights at work, their actual rights to exist, they're not worried about a piece of plastic that they haven't ever bought in their life and they're age 30 and therefore will not be buying a 5-year-old's toy, like being gender inclusive, but it's always, sorry.
You don't think there could be like a fake it till you make it element there? Where these things are being introduced and maybe... I'm cynical. I mean, I'm like that stem cell Barbie or that stem Barbie, right? But yes, right. A lot of times these things get introduced and they get introduced with this element, especially in America. It crosses political boundaries, but it is more of a right-wing thing where they might present it as like, look at the ramifications that this is having. Now we're not allowed to do. Now, freedom is the most important thing for us, and we're no longer, look, I have to address you by your pronouns. I'm not going to address you by, or I'm going to jail. I'm not going to, that's the Jordan Peterson canard, right? And so I guess I just wonder, like, there's this initial outrage, right, whenever something like that happens, and then it kind of seems to cool down. And I suppose I wonder, like, just looking generationally, like looking at people, although this kind of falls apart, I wonder what you think about this, right? Like, do you think it's fair to say, like, if you look at, say, baby boomers versus Gen Xers versus millennials versus what is after millennials?
Z.
Okay.
Z. Sorry.
That if you're talking to a baby boomer, they're generally going to be and I realize I'm making a broad generalization here, but they're generally going to be more closed off to this sort of thing than the generations that came after. And can you then take that and extrapolate it and say, okay, well, like you said, Caroline, the moral compass is, or whatever it was, is slowly sort of bending towards justice. Do you see that? Do you feel like that? Do you think that this can be done through evolution, or do you think that we need like revolution, right?
I mean, I think there always comes a moment, like, and maybe to me it seems, these these battles again that are happening right now in so many state legislatures and what have you. I mean, you can't incremental justice your way. At least I feel like we're at a point where this isn't like an incremental justice thing. This is like, this line's been drawn in the sand, and we have to like make our stand and say like, we're not going away. We're not going to wait another just 80, 90, 250 years for our humanity and our fundamental, like, the validity of our identities to be acknowledged.
Like being given the minimum you could possibly being given legally, like rights-wise, right? And just like, oh, well, you got this last year, right? So, wait a few years and maybe something else will happen in your favor, right? That is not a good way forward.
Right, but and I mean also though, like, I mean the issues that the trans community experiences, I mean, employment discrimination, homelessness, and I have to mention, that obviously I'm a white trans woman, so in many ways I'm very, very privileged. I mean, the epidemic of violence that is experienced, by Black trans women in particular, is like truly, it should be like a national like emergency. It should be like something that our whole culture is deeply concerned about and pouring resources into addressing and like raising the alarm about. But it's not because anti-Blackness and transphobia and misogyny, all of these things combine to make those horrible crimes seem like just unworthy of our collective attention or concern. So I mean, I guess, and it's appropriate that it's Pride Month right now, for me to say Pride is not a parade, Pride is a fucking riot, and we can't, march on corporate floats our way into the queer and trans liberation that we need, right? It is something that it does require stronger rhetoric and stronger action than what's presented to us for capitalist consumption.
So definitely more than what is happening today. Definitely more than today's trajectory. We need logarithmic change, not linear change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Ms., what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. On the dot. I just wanted to draw attention. I've got the chat open on the side, and Unbuilt Nuke has said it perfectly, saying the problem is that Pride literally started as riots against an oppressive state, but like all things, capital will capitalize on the counterculture, and that's exactly it in a nutshell. Pride was never something to be celebrated. It wasn't a celebration. It wasn't a party. It wasn't an opportunity for cis straight people to get drunk on the streets wearing nothing. It wasn't any of that. It was literally a case of like survival. It was for rights. It was for the right to exist. So for it to for Marsha P. Johnson, for instance, the first Black trans woman who started the Stonewall riots and stuff like that, for that to be desaturated to such an extent that now we are living in this like corporate like hell of it being advertised back to us, pushed back to us, is like oh hey, remember when you had no rights whatsoever, and like this was all you could do to get attention, to like tell other people around you that you actually are humans and deserve human rights. Yeah, here's a mug with a rainbow on it. Pay for it.
Yeah, like
thank us.
The Pride March in New York City has evolved to the point where it is now like a tourist attraction. Arguably, like, there could be an argument that it doesn't have that much to do with gay rights, because lots of cis people go to New York to take part in this incredible party that happens in New York City every year, right? So I could see where that would be like really like frustrating and be like, what the fuck, man? This was not the point, right? And it's been turned into something that wasn't the intent. Unbuilt Nuke, like you said, like said it really, really well. And I think Unbuilt Nuke is new to the chat, so I'm glad that they're here. But the second comment that they said was, the key is to connect back to the original revolutionary energy that created it. So, yeah, I mean, that definitely answers the question, right, of is it will business as usual get us there, in y'all's opinion, or does it require something more? And this says nothing of like, I wonder if we had this conversation in 2015, how it would have been, because in 2015, I think in America, I realize this is more of an America thing, right? But the idea of Trump being elected was a joke, right? It really was. Like even to Republicans, it was a joke. The fact that it happened, and the fact that these unseen near majority sort of revealed themselves at that point, I can't help. I'm sure it must feel to marginalized people like, oh my God, like it felt like we were making a lot of progress, and then the rug got pulled out from under us. Caroline, looks like you're about to.
It wasn't a huge. I mean, Trump winning was a surprise, but the undercurrent, which was of, I mean, racism, the white supremacy, homophobia, transphobia. I mean, I feel like certainly since Reagan, these things have all just been subtext of conservative rhetoric and conservative thought, but dog whistled perhaps to some degree, but that really has been what the conservative, I don't want to dignify it by calling it a movement, but the conservative, conservative politics in the U.S. of the past 40 years have been about, is appealing to those impulses in a certain swath of the electorate, and Trump just like it no longer needed to be subtext with Trump.
Right.
Like that was what made him so liberating to those people, is you can just say it now. You can just bring it out into the open, right?
Yeah,
and,
we're a corporatocracy. It's no longer a dirty little secret, right? And we're that's.
Yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, I didn't think of that when I was saying that. To me, I think there was a part of me because of the privilege that I have. It was very easy for me to be like, to see Obama being elected as like like it felt genuine to me, right? Like I cried the night that he was elected, right? And I was just like,
Sure.
This felt like, oh, a whole new beginning. Everything is going to be great from here on out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was not. That was a very naive point of view, but it still felt very significant to me. And then Trump getting elected was not so much Trump getting elected, but I guess when Trump won the primary, or even became like a prominent force within the primary, even before he was nominated, right? It was just like, oh my God, like this is what's been going on that I've been able to ignore because it hasn't affected me, right? So I've been able to like not see it, not care about it. Like as long as I don't lift up too many rocks, things feel like it feels like things are very progressive right now. And so in a way that was a wake-up call, right? I think to a lot of people who would be probably more. I mean, when I moved to Washington D.C., one of the reasons I did it was because I wanted to be very proactive in these kinds of things, and that was a direct result of Trump being elected. Prior to that, I kind of felt like, oh, they've got it, right? Like they don't need me, right? Like, and so in a way, it almost like kind of dulled allyship in a lot of these issues amongst people like me who, although well-intentioned, wasn't paying close enough attention, I think is really what it comes down to. Does that sound accurate? Ms., does that sound about... I realize we're talking about a lot of America-centric stuff here. I'm wondering how any of that resonates with you, or...
I think a lot of things that Americans don't realize, which is, fair enough because you've got your own hellscape to take care of, is that basically...
Did you say hellscape?
Yes.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Almost every single thing since, colonialism that the US has done has directly affected the rest of the world. I stayed home from college the day that Trump got arrested. Oh my God, we can only hope. Elected. Freudian slip. Because yeah, like I know I wasn't the only person. You know, even though I lived in the UK, even though this didn't affect me directly, even though I was 16.
Yeah.
Like I stayed up the whole night watching the vote count. I know a few of my friends did, and I felt so sick. I couldn't go to college. And then I think the week that happened, I did go to college, and I remember like having this huge fight with some other kid in my class. You know, like it's we do get every single thing that happens in the US. You know, it does make headline news here. It does affect us personally. Everything that's gone wrong in the UK for the last few years has been a direct result of Trump.
Yeah.
Like all the government shifts, all the government changes, all the kind of like access to rights, and the way that, you know, the UK is currently trying to cut down on all things in terms of trans rights. And even Brexit. Oh my God, how could I forget Brexit? It's all a direct result of
Boris
US-centric
Johnson.
white supremacy. Yeah,
Yeah,
leaking into the UK.
I think one thing you might not have to worry about, Ms., is the only thing I would disagree with you there is that I think most Americans do feel like what happens in America defines what happens for the rest of the world. But I totally get your point. I'm sorry, I'm being a little glib there,
No,
just sort
no,
of pointing out that. But yeah, so I guess this conversation has been amazing. Like I couldn't have predicted it. I couldn't have planned it, and I've learned a lot. I wonder if there's anything, because we're going on almost 3 hours here. Is there anything that either of you that has occurred to either of you, or maybe that I'm missing in chat? I just want to be sure. I don't want to end things without making sure that we've kind of covered what you both feel like we should cover, given the limits of this context.
Yeah, I don't know, Ms. Do you have anything? Nothing springs to mind. I feel like we've covered a fair amount in this conversation.
I mean, ultimately, it's one of those things you could literally talk to the end of time about. You know,
Right, exactly. Like, we've
so
said a
there's
lot,
just
but we've
no-
also, you can only say the smallest fraction about these issues, you know.
Unless you want to like win a world record for this being the longest stream ever made.
Could be
Right.
Then-
we'd have to go on Twitch and then do a 48-hour
marathon.
Yeah.
Let's see here. This is Nicholas. Of course, The feeling was that once Trump was elected, the mask is off, right? And certainly, I think a lot of people felt that as well. And I brought this up before, but I want to be sure that to acknowledge Grace's, the corporate rainbow washing of pride is disgusting. It's just as bad as the pink washing that happened around breast cancer awareness. This is a direct function of capitalism, right? It's just the way things are going to happen as long as someone can benefit from this stuff. Let's see. Pavi is saying before we end, we must see as. Is this
okay?
Ms., this is you?
This is my cat, the one that got stuck. Yeah, right. Sorry. I feel like I spend too much time in the Discord. I feel like I scare everybody else off. I have this cat who's not the brightest thing in the world. But he's very sweet, bless. But he's less than a year old, and he went missing a couple of weeks ago. And we spent 2 whole days searching for him, asking all the neighbors, posting flyers, everything. And then we found him purely by accident. It turns out he got lodged in our own car, in our own garage. He had he'd gone underneath and like crawled in the top, and then he got his foot wedged
above
in
the
something,
tire,
so he
sort
couldn't.
of.
More kind of center. Like if you opened the bonnet,
The
you
hood,
could see down to the engine. He was underneath the engine.
Holy crap!
So we had to get like a mechanic, and he had to get a crowbar, and he had to crowbar the cat out. So that's I was panicking on the Discord when it was happening, because it'd been 2 whole days without food and water. That this cat's been stuck in this car in our own property, and we've been looking, neighborhoods and neighborhoods away from him. So that's what people are. Can I run and get my cat?
Please,
I'm so
yes.
sorry.
And while you're running to get your cat, I'm going to relate a story that doesn't have as much of a happy ending, that has to do with cars and cats. Go ahead and
Okay, sorry.
So when I was a kid, my parents went on vacation for a week, and we had a cat who had just had kittens, an outdoor cat who had just had kittens. They went away for a week, came back. So their car had been parked in the driveway for a week. We did not know it, but the mother and the kittens had sort of established like a little nest above the tire, up in the tire well. And yes, and my mother started the car and backed the car up, and almost, more than half of the kittens were killed. It was really, really horrible. So Azrael is very, very, very lucky. Look at the eyes. Wow.
He's got this kind of blank expression on him permanently. He's not the he's not the most gifted of cats.
I was going to do an amazing looking cat. What kind of cat is that? Is that? Oh.
I'm not sure. I think he's supposed to be like a Scottish Fold mix. He's very polite. He's very grabby, but he's
I love the markings in the eyes. That is. And of course, the name that's from Good Omens. Is that?
Yes, it is. I do have another cat, but we got her a year before him, so her name doesn't match. She's named Pepsi, which
I don't like that.
Yeah, figured.
Oh well, that is an adorable cat. I can't thank you both enough for this conversation. It's been great, Ms. It's wonderful to have you on.
Yeah.
I forgive you for what you did to me in Murder Mystery Trivia Party.
That's fine. I'm sure I'll do it again.
And Carolyn, every time you're on, it's just a fascinating conversation, and I love the fact that you sometimes bless us with your presence. I think that is great.
That's very kind of you. It's my pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you as well.
Okay, I'm gonna say goodnight just because I'm fucking beaten. I'm almost 50 years old. So. But yeah, thank you both again. And I mean, I honestly feel like kind of like you all said, like we could continue talking about this. This could be an ongoing thing. Maybe it's something that we need to bring back like once a month or something to just kind of keep the thread going. But yeah, thank you both, and thank you Azrael for, I don't know, man, like a little scary, like when Azrael, he or she, not that it matters. But,
He's a he.
Okay, it's a little scary when he looks at the camera because his eyes are just so, I want to say dead, but
I promise you, there's just nothing going on between the ears. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good for Azrael. All right. Thank you both so much, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh wow, that was great. I liked having two people. It felt like more like a moderator role for me, which I don't know if that's like copping out and just being, so I don't have to say as much. But I enjoyed that. We've done that before, but not that often. But it's an interesting coincidence. A trans man and a trans woman, and that was not planned. It just happened. So yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you, Ms., and thank you, Carolyn. I am beat, so I need to log off, and I don't even have something to like leave y'all with. I feel like I've given my all, and it's here. Wait, I gotta start bringing in. Is it here? No, it's here. Here we go. I want to thank Carolyn. I want to thank Ms. I want to thank Selkie. And I want to thank Heisenberg, because, Heisenberg, fake, I don't know. No, I don't want to thank Heisenberg. Actually, I'm glad that it's been globally accepted that the Heisenberg section of Resident Evil 8 was just an abysmal piece of crap. Oh, this is super kind. Nick, thank you. And Q, thank you. Pavi, thanks. Colorful Grace, thank you so much. Leela Brune. Coffee, Cheetos, and chicken. Special thanks to there's a bunch of new people here tonight. That was really cool to see. I liked that very much. I hope everybody has a good night, and I will see you all. I know I keep saying every time we end one of these, I keep saying I'll probably see you before next week. This weekend is pretty chock-a-block for me, so you probably won't see me before next week. Although I am working on a video, but it's a video for the other channel, so maybe that one will get done. It really depends. Depends on how I feel, I guess. Isn't that everything? Maddie, good night. Cawthon, oh, I didn't see you until now, Cawthon. Good to see you, and good night. And we'll talk to you all soon. I'm just thrilled by the fact that this thing exists and that I get to talk to you people every week. It's wonderful. And thank you, Isra. And thank you, Isra, for a lot of what you were talking about last week served as fodder for what we were talking about tonight. Yeah, new video in the works, but I say that and it could still be a month until it comes out. Oh, that's awesome to hear. Coffee, Cheetos, chicken. It's actually kind of tough to say. Coffee, Cheetos, chicken. Thanks. All right, I will talk to you all later. Have a good night.